Kathleen Le Roux, who is one of the founders of Toronto Lindy Hop, is going to be here and leading this panel. So thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mandy. Yeah, so let's get this started. I'm really happy to be moderating, and I'm wondering if it's a great idea for me to moderate or a terrible idea for me to moderate, because I really know very little before 1997. So I'm hoping that that's maybe a good thing for a moderator to be to not know anything and then just ask away. So I have a list of questions I can come back to, but maybe we'll just get kind of a flow of ping-ponging off of each other. And possibly open it to the audience? I don't know, we'll see. Yeah. I was talking with some people just earlier about the first seed of when we each heard about or saw or attended something about Lindy Hop. And so I wanted to actually start the panel with, where was the very first seed of your interest in or hearing about Lindy Hop, if you can remember that? Was it a flyer? Was it a teacher? Was it word of mouth? What was it for each of you? Can we start with, let's start with Jana. Jana. Sorry.
You're still used to calling me
Jane, I know.
as I was known. Yeah, so for me, so I started with ballroom dancing. I was 16 years old. Signed up downtown Toronto for a class of 10 ballroom lessons. And hold and behold, I don't know, halfway through, my ballroom instructor went to a Frankie Manning workshop, which was the first Frankie Manning workshop and the first Lindy Hop workshop organized in Toronto. And he came back and showed me the swing out. And it was my cousin and I, Joanna, a lot of you know her. They showed us the swing out, and from then on, we went straight home. We rented swing kids and stayed up all night practicing the swing kids moves, and that was it. I mean, that's what it was. Sean and Ramona? Gary and Ramona. It was Gary and Ramona teaching ballroom. Yeah, so very well known. I think in the Argentine tango scene actually here, way back there.
Great, thank you. Why don't we pass it on to Chachi?
Started dancing or started doing Lindy Hop? Started dancing. I stumbled across dancing. I came across old people square dancing in a park, and I was a little intoxicated, so I tried it and I liked it. So I went back the next week sober to make sure that I wasn't just and from there I met Peter, and Peter took me to TSES dances, which were East Coast Swing at the time. And then we went to a contra dance in Rochester, and I saw Bill Borgita and Kathy Isaacs dancing Lindy Hop at the contra event, and I said, wow. And about 2 weeks later, I moved to Ithaca to learn how to Lindy Hop.
Did you move to Ithaca because of Lindy Hop? Really? Go, yeah, sure. How about Lisa?
Well, again, if it weren't for Peter, I wouldn't have been here. I knew Peter from long ago, Scottish country dancing days, and he dragged me somewhere fun and happy, and that's where I started my dancing with West Coast Swing. Started that in about 92 or 93, and then in our trips to Ithaca, probably with Peter, I was introduced to Lindy Hop from the West Coast Ithaca scene. So that's how it started for me.
And let's on to Simon.
Okay. Well, I first heard about Lindy Hop when I was a teenager because I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, the Black Civil Rights leader, a great book, by the way, if you haven't read it. So when he was a teenager in Boston and Harlem, he loved Lindy Hop. And so he relates his experiences of dancing Lindy Hop with the Duke Ellington Band and all that sort of thing in those places. And he said some very interesting things about Lindy Hop. One thing he said was, any two people that can Lindy Hop at all can Lindy Hop together. which I think most people understand today, but there was a time in Lindy Land where that was not really understood. And at the end of the 90s, if any of you were around then, in some places. Anyway, and he also said when they had competitions in Boston, it was all sort of improvised to fast music. And what did the Lindy Hoppers like best in a competition in the day? Well, yes, of course they loved aerials and air steps. Yes, they did, him too. But what they also loved was anything new or different, new and improvised, different styles of doing Lindy Hop. So his favorite Lindy Hop partner, when she was in competition, she danced Lindy Hop in what he called a ballet or balletic style. You can imagine a balletic style of Lindy Hop. Anyway, so I first met Frankie Manning, or came across him in 1994 at a vintage dance week in Cleveland, which was interesting. He just taught a couple of classes there, had some interesting things to say. And then in 1995 summer, a bunch of us went down to something called Boogie in the Mountains, where various people were teaching Lindy Hop. On the way, we stopped off in the famous location of Ithaca, New York, where we stayed at Peter Kaufman's house. And he showed us some really great Lindy Hop videos of, for example, Can't Top the Lindy Hop, which was filmed in 1994 in New York City, and there's great stuff on it, great performances by the Rhythm Hotshots, all kinds of great stuff. Anyway, we were pretty much very into this by then. So we first saw Lindy Hop being done socially at this event called Boogie in the Mountains, north of New York City somewhere or other. And it was really great. So myself and my friend Margaret decided we would make sure this came to Toronto ASAP, because for us at least, it's so much better than any other partner dancing then going on in Toronto. It's just a fact, as we saw it. So we asked the now infamous and rightly despised Stephen Mitchell to come and give a weekend. He and Frankie Manning were at that time regarded as the world's best Lindy Hop teachers by many people, and they were great and inspiring teachers, that's for sure. Anyway, so we started it in October '95 with a Thanksgiving weekend. So we had 3 days of workshops, and we had dances that were DJ'd. The music was not necessarily great, but it was as good as anybody could DJ in Toronto at that time. And it was a very exciting and kind of electric weekend. People were really thrilled about this.
And
people
Simon,
walking down.
can I interrupt for a second and ask you about this weekend? How many people would have attended this workshop, and who were they, and where did they come from? And why were they there?
Well, there were probably about 90 people there. So some of them were from Toronto Student Dance Society. Some of them were from ballroom dance classes here and there. So for example, and Gary Defoe and Ramona Zhang were there. You were there in October '95? Oh wow, okay. The reason people were really there is because myself and Margaret and a few other people had promoted the event very strongly in Toronto and got people to come. People had no idea what Lindy Hop was in Toronto at that time, right? Lindy Hop? Lindy what? Lindy who? No idea. I'd never heard of it. Anyway, that went really well. So, and then we sort of put in place the things you want to put in place to sort of create a Lindy Hop scene in a city. So we organized a series of further workshops. Frankie Manning came here in January '95, and some of the best Swedish Lindy Hop teachers and performers at that time came here in the spring and in the summer of '96. Did I say January '96 for Frankie? January '96. Anyway, and we set up a performance group called Toronto Lindy Hoppers, which Peter and Jane were in. Anyway, I think it was pretty good, considering that we were all, beginners. Our first performance was on television, live, on breakfast television in January '96. Many other details to say, but maybe that's enough. We also tried to set up weekly dances on Sunday afternoons, which is a great time for a dance, I think.
This is wonderful, and I can hear more and more, but can we maybe pass it to Peter, then we'll kind of come back,
All right, so my answer is pretty vague about, when did you first do the Lindy Hop? Because I was doing all sorts of dancing all over the place, and I was the quintessential dance gypsy. A dance gypsy, by the way, is someone who spends more time traveling to a dance than actual dance time. So I got this car, a very cheap old car, in good condition, and I drove it everywhere, and every weekend I was somewhere, and there were people in Ann Arbor who thought I lived in Ann Arbor, and at the same time there were people in Boston who were sure I lived in Boston. So I danced pretty much everything that was not controlled by an institution, you know, ballroom dancing. But people had all sorts of names for all sorts of dancing, like, you know, jitterbug, or they didn't call it anything. They just did it. And a lot of these events were like NEFA and places where, like big weekends where everyone got together and did dozens of different dances all weekend. And eventually I kind of settled on a few choice places like Ithaca and Rochester and Ann Arbor, and I spent a lot of time in Ithaca and Rochester because they were close. And they had really good dancing. Like Ithaca was dance paradise at that time, which explains why Chachi moved to Ithaca right away. That's in a nutshell something. Now, a couple of things. By the way, Malcolm X's favorite dance partner, I think her name was Laura. And if you want to read about that, there's one chapter in the book entitled Laura. Just read that whole chapter, and it is the most detailed account of the Lindy Hop of any book that is not a book about dancing. Now, what was the other thing? Oh yes, the other thing is that Susan Tadrow, who's there, she told me yesterday that in 1991, a bunch of the Toronto Swing Dance Society crew went to a workshop somewhere in the States to do the Lindy Hop. So I think that's part of the history.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like a lot of influence from our cousins in the South there. And how did you all meet each other? Like, we've heard a few connections already. Can you recall, Jana, when you first met Lisa, for example?
It was a very small circle of people that were doing the Lindy Hop at the time. So if you were one of the few people that were trying to figure it out, I mean, there was only so many other people that you could possibly meet. So we all, you know, just by nature of, you know, the smallness of the community kind of met. I was talking to Chachi. I know for sure I was at that workshop at Stephen Mitchell in '95, and I was so sure that Chachi was there from Ithaca with another one of his Ithaca buddies. And he doesn't think so, but I think so. So I know I saw him with another male dancing, and at that time, you didn't see that. You didn't see two males dancing. You didn't see two females dancing, and they were so hot. They were amazing. And it was Chris Yee with Chachi dancing, and they just blew everybody else out of the water. It was amazing, and that's what really kind of inspired me. And I mean, Peter, and I mean, you were organizing all the workshops, so I saw you all the time. Lisa, you were teaching. Peter was everywhere. He was everywhere. So yeah.
So in the very early days so we've been to Ithaca, we've been inspired by Ithaca, we come back, Simon's starting to establish some dances and bringing Frankie Manning up, and so the early days of the scene in Toronto, can you describe what that was like? The early days, like you were just starting to talk about how small it was, but tell us maybe about what would we see? Where would we go to dance? What would it look like?
The first swing dance I can remember is Gladstone Hotel, organized by TSDS. And that was the first time I could remember going out to swing dancing. It was East Coast Swing, and everybody knew everybody, and there was about maybe 6 of us that would come out on a Tuesday night or something like that. It wasn't a lot. It was at the point where if you were with another swing dancer and you were in the supermarket and something swingy came on, you practiced. Because it's not like you can go to an event and you know you're going to see 20 people. It's like you go to an event and someone's sick, you just lost half your dance partners. I think we're done.
Okay, so we are actually out of time. Mandy, you want to add something?
No, I mean, I would love this to go on. I know there's also lots of restless kids and good to keep moving there so we can still get the party back on. So it was a bit hard to know how to schedule this when it would fit in. I think a rest is good, but we want to also dance and have a good time. Listen, Simon is still the person who's probably the most involved in the dance community. We owe him a lot for what he does on a weekly basis. So very, very grateful for what he's been doing for all these years. It's incredible. But I want to say that these other people also live in Toronto and are involved in various ways. And you see Peter out pretty often, and Chachi pops in and out. And I didn't even know Lisa was back living in Toronto until I started planning this reunion. And Jana, who is in Toronto and doesn't seem like rusty in the least, and is a beautiful dancer. So to all of you, there are newer dancers here too who are really active in the community. I would like to encourage you to drag these people out. Seriously, because there's some real history here and some real magic, and there's a lot of other people in the room who have come out after 15, 18 years, and so the current community organizers, of which I am no longer a part, which I'm glad about, I'm taking my break, but I put it on you. Please do more and invite these people. It's going to be very nice. So with that said, thank you all of you. Someday we're going to do a part 2, but we're going to go back to some dancing. Thank you everyone so much. Thank you.